Let me rephrase. What did you take away from his statements there?
That it was following the purge that we had on the 14th. So if you're about the training, you're going to continue to show up. And that was addressing the group that showed up from the purge. But now this is the real deal. What you come in here, you're being committed.
Did he talk at all about a plan of his?
His pre-plan, yes.
And what was Pete's 3 plan?
To go in at 3 a.m. and kidnap people at
The house?
well, political figures. Didn't really have a specific target about that, but his plan was 3.
Being 3 a.m.
Yes.
Okay. Did he ever ask you to convey that plan to anybody?
No, he addressed it himself.
Okay. Okay. Going back, thank you, to the meeting at Mr. Bellar's, the Ghost Group meeting. Was Wisconsin discussed at all at Mr. Bellar?
It was, yes.
Tell us about that, please.
So it was brought up that Adam had invited us to the Wisconsin trip or for training for the FTX. And then I stated, I'm not sure what kind of stuff is going to be done out there to maintain an open mind. I wasn't sure if there was belt-fed weaponry, any kind of drugs or anything of that nature.
Did you mention that this sounded like offensive training to you?
Yes.
Okay. Was Mr. Bellar there when you mentioned that?
He was, yes.
Okay. And did Mr. Bellar eventually go to Wisconsin?
He did, yes.
Okay. Let's talk about Wisconsin a little bit. This was a national training, is that correct?
That's correct.
Were there people from different states present?
Yes.
Approximately how many different states were represented, if you will?
About 5 or so.
Okay. What did you understand the purpose of this training to be about?
Training for preparation for political science.
Okay. Did this have any connection to the Boogaloo?
It did.
Okay. In terms of the domino effect, we've heard about that. I think we testified about it earlier this morning. What did you understand the domino effect to be?
When one state would fall or assault began, other states would follow suit.
Okay. In terms of going to Wisconsin, tell us, if you will, who from the Wolverine Watchmen attended?
Myself, Paul Bellard, Caleb Franks, Ty Garvin, Daniel Harris, and Brandon Serta.
Okay. Did you all travel separately?
We rode in a Suburban.
Okay. Who drove?
I didn't.
Okay. Or did you get, is this Suburban something that you acquired yourself? You rented?
I did, yes.
Okay. Were you reimbursed by the FBI for that?
Yes.
Okay. What was the reasoning behind you driving to Wisconsin?
Again, to maintain some sort of positive control with them inside the vehicle.
Okay. When you go up there, does everybody have their weapons?
In Wisconsin?
And you travel there, does everybody travel there with their weapons?
They do, yes.
Okay, so in the vehicle, at least, there are firearms, correct?
Several, yes.
Okay, and you're driving to maintain more control, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Whose idea was it that you drive?
Ty Garvin and myself were discussing that what kind of get.
Okay.
But it was coming through the FBI for myself to drive.
Was there a safety consideration in that?
Yes, being that we're out of state, and again, we have large states gathering there. So I would have a means to escape if something were to happen.
Okay. Did you have any recording devices with you that day?
I did, yes.
I mean, this is actually a multi-day training, is that correct?
It is, yes.
Okay. How many different, you told us that, thank you. Is there somebody from Wisconsin rather that's hosting?
Yes.
Okay. So the Wolverine, okay, did Adam Fox go?
He did.
And did he travel there with you?
No, we did not.
Okay, and was there another, before going, was there any discussion about, with the group that attended from the Wolverine Watchmen? Was there any discussion about, kind of like the Dublin, Ohio discussion, was there any concern about, the group's welfare?
There was, yes.
Tell us about that.
So it's concerned that we might be, again, walking into some kind of FBI trap, or if large states are showing up here, there might be a large line of ammunition. Just my response. Paul was pulling up again Google Earth to go to a fallback spot where we could make sure we showed up.
Okay, and this was before you went to Wisconsin?
It is, yes.
Okay, and when you say Paul, we're talking about Mr. Bellar,
That's right.
and when you say he pulled up, fallback locations, and pulled it up on what?
Google Earth. So we were using, I don't know if he was putting from the tablet or phone on, casting it onto the TV so you can see a bigger picture of it. And we're canvassing the area to find where a relatively large structure was at. We found one, like a construction site that had concrete walls, and so we could go for cover, and then we can get an elevated standpoint.
Okay, was there any concern about maybe law enforcement showing up when this was going on, and we were looking for these locations to stick to?
There was, yes.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about what happened at Cambria. What day do you arrive?
Late Friday night.
Okay, and do you remember the date in July of 2020? Okay, and where do you stay at?
In a hotel.
Okay, and where does the rest of the group stay at?
We all share a room inside there. So that was what us is.
So the Wolverine Watchmen travel as a group, correct?
Yes,
A lodge as a group, is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. When it's time to go to the training on Saturday, does the group go as a group to the training location?
We do, yes.
Okay. Do you train as a group?
Periodically, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And tell us what happens when you get there. Saturday morning, what happens?
Upon arriving to the training FTX area, other members of the national movement had already been there, so they were conducting training, so they had to stop the volley of fire. They were running, allow us to approach up. With the driveway work, as you approached we're shooting essentially dry incoming rounds. Went further up the driveway to get behind the car. Had like a safety or drinking water.
Okay. In terms of, were you well received when you arrived? And were you welcomed?
We were, yes.
Okay. In terms of Mr. Bellar attending, did Mr. Bellar bring anything with him that he had recently purchased to provide at the training that you're aware of?
But I'm aware of, no, I don't know if at the time that he had his new rifle that he had purchased.
Did Mr. Bellar provide any training there?
He did, yes.
Okay, describe that for us.
He was running the medical lane he had over there. He wasn't pleased with the level of training that was being put out, so he took over that lane to provide training for the individual.
Did Mr. Bellar bring anything with him from Michigan to help him with that training aspect?
And a large outside of a medical bag for trauma treatment.
Okay, and what kind of training was done on, before the training on Saturday, was there any type of meeting beforehand in the garage?
There was, yes.
Tell us about that.
And again, was going over the course of fire that was going on. Barry was putting out, having those individuals there, why they were there, to continue to drink water. It was very hot. It was in July. And then the course of lanes that was going to be conducted.
Okay, and did Mr. Croft have remarks then in the morning about why everyone was there?
He did, yes.
Tell us about that.
Made statements about why everybody was there, didn't know or aware of why they're there, that it was for violence. Dublin meeting, and this was furthermore people for the Boogaloo movement.
Okay. Was it consistent with your understanding of what the Boogaloo was all about?
Yes.
Okay. So once the training began on Saturday, tell us what type of evolutions were taught.
So the course of fire, as I recall, is a reaction to contact. So you would be initially online, shooting at a threat and then bounding back, so like a tactical retreat. Your buddy is covering you. Fixed barrels, like water barrels, 50-gallon drum that you would get behind that, simulating cover and concealment. Doing reloads, again, another volley of fire as your teammate or individual volley back, basically retreating from a hostile.
Any type of, a shoot house or kill house?
It was a construction of a shoot house. They actually had walls set up with a door that you could reach. They had it made up that you could shotgun to it, would reach the door, gate entry. So walls were configured that you could change around the room. If you want to have a larger room, a smaller room, simulate a hallway, so a multiple room structure.
How long did the training last that?
We started late morning here, so 10 or 11, and went until later evening, maybe 6 or 7 or so.
Okay. Did the Wolverine Watchmen as a group leave together?
We did, yes.
Okay. And tell us about what did you do for dinner that day?
I went to dinner at Dino's, was the little cafe that was attached to the hotel room, and had dinner with other members that was participating in training. Barry Croft was present.
Was Mr. Mr. Bellar present at that dinner?
He was, yes.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about what Mr. Croft was talking about?
Just continue his rhetoric about abuse of the government, kicking off the food, the gathering of other groups, his various conversations.
Okay. Was he shy about talking about that?
He was not. He was very animated about it, very passionate.
Okay. In terms of your participation on Saturday in training, what did you do?
For the Saturday one with the bounty techniques, I participated in. I did provide kind of the instructor lane for it. With regards to the shoe house, I don't know if that was on Saturday or rolling into Sunday. But as far as safety techniques, again, with how individuals were stacking up, now we're using fire, so the height of the negative discharge is more common. So I would instruct people like, hey, don't go to fire until after we get inside the room, because I don't want people rushing, feeling like a preemptive pulse to get hot.
Sure. In terms of Mr. Bellar teaching the medical lane, did Mr. Fox go through the medical lane that day?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. And Adam, can I have I'll show you a video here, Dan, and then I'll ask you a couple of questions about it. Dan, who do we see in that video?
Various members from the Wolverine Watchmen.
Do you know who exactly?
Ty Garvin, Caleb Franks, Paul Beller, and I believe Daniel Harris was in there.
Okay. And I know the video isn't real long, but there are red targets and green targets. Can you just tell us what that's about?
We'll simulated a shoot, no shoot target. So the red where is your threat targets, and those are what you would be engaging.
Okay. And the walls were shown in that video that could be moved around.
They were, yes.
Okay. 168. Same thing. We're going to show you.
Ready? You can commence firing.
And again, that was at another kill house drill that was done in Cambria that weekend.
Was, yes.
Do you know which day these things occurred or not?
No, not offhand. No.
Fair enough. I mean, but you're certain this happened in Cambria, the July weekend in 2020?
Absolutely, yes.
Again, that was Mr. Bellar first through the door, is that correct? The, in terms of going to Cambria, I mean, did you have to convince Mr. Bellar to go? Did you have to talk him into it at all?
No.
Was there anything, did you, in terms of giving him, you provided transportation to him, correct?
Did, yes.
Okay, did you pay for his lodging?
No, Ty picked up the lodge.
Okay, did you pay for any of his food?
I paid for his dinner.
Okay, how many dinners?
This one.
Okay, and that was during the entire weekend?
Yes.
Okay, did you provide him any money or cash?
No.
Did you provide him, you know, ammunition or anything else that might cost money for him to participate?
No.
Was there anything that you had to do? Did you have to use force or trickery to get Mr. Bellar to participate in this?
I didn't know.
Okay. I want to draw your attention now at a later in the month, July, and ask if you attended a training out in Fowlerville around the 26th of July.
I did, yes.
And how did you know to go to this training?
It was put out through our chat communications on wire.
Okay, and who was running that, was this the QRF communication?
I'm not sure which window it was on.
Okay.
What communication.
And Your Honor, could I just get clarification, which chat? Was it the bonfire chat? Was it the Wolverine Watchmen chat?
I think, yeah, that's what I was just asking.
Oh,
You said
okay.
you didn't know.
Perfect. Oh, he doesn't know?
I can't recall, but which specific window it was on? I can't recall.
Okay.
Okay. In terms of, I mean, was this, did all the Wolverine Watchmen that used to go to Joe and Pete's for training show up, or was this a smaller group?
This was the shadow group that was put up from the July 7th meeting. That's where Caleb Frank, the property that we were shooting at, had offered that we could utilize training there.
And was he one of the people that was invited by Paul Bellar to join the Ghost group?
He was, yes.
Okay. And when tell us about who attends this training, please.
It's myself, Paul, Caleb, it's his property. Ty. There was a couple other members of that group that was there.
Okay. About what time of the day did the training begin?
Late morning, early afternoon,
How long did it last?
a few hours.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that were practiced?
So it was predominantly inside of a vehicle, reacting to a contact. So simulate shooting through the windshield, getting that out of the vehicle, using the A and B pillars as like cover, and then moving towards the rear of the vehicle for more sustainment fire. And then we did another course of action where the vehicle was at a greater distance, and we would assault forward, use the vehicle as cover, shoot across the hood from the rear of the vehicle, and then exchange positions, doing reloads and shooting across.
Okay. Did you bring your full kit that day?
Did.
Okay, was Mr. Bellar there with any weapons?
He was, yes.
Okay, what weapons did Mr. Bellar bring?
He was using his AR-15 during the course of fire for that.
Okay, if you remember, did he have a sidearm that day?
I can't recall.
Okay. Anybody else attend that training that day? Think of?
Caleb Franks, Ty, James Harris, Randy Caserta were also there during the course of fire.
Okay.
I don't know if there's one or two more individuals that was there present.
I'm going to show you a video here. 174. Is that ask you to take a look at this, and I'll ask you a couple of questions.
Keep moving.
Voice do we hear? Keep moving.
That is mine.
Why are you making that statement?
Because the course of fire was moving towards the rear of the vehicle. Brandon Caserta was shooting from the passenger side, and Paul Butler was simulating the driver position. So Brandon had made it further behind the vehicle, and Paul was ahead of the fire line. So for his safety, I was telling him to move further back so they were online with each other.
Okay. Did you happen to notice if Mr. Bellar had any type of sidearm that day?
He did. He had his pistol on his belt.
Let me take you now to August of 2020. Do you remember a field training exercise that was held out on Dunn Road at Joe Morrison and Pete Musico's place on the 9th of August? Okay. And did you attend that?
Good.
And tell me how you knew to go there. How did you know the training was going to be had?
It was put out through Watchmen that there was going to be training.
Okay. When you get there, is Mr. Bellar present?
No, it's not.
Okay. Is Mr. Musico present?
No, he's not.
Any idea where Mr. Musico is on this date?
I think he had a family member that had recently injured themselves or had been injured out of state, and he was going down for the well-being of them.
Okay. What time of day do you get there?
Mid-afternoon, 2 o'clock. So
How many people show up to this training?
10 around about. The exact number I'm not too sure on.
At this point in time, I mean, is Mr. Morrison still interested in recruiting?
Yes.
Right? And tell us a little bit about what's practiced during this training.
Again, more room clearing, vehicle ambush, vehicle assault, and other types of ambushes.
You know, Mr. Bellar is not there, is that correct?
That's correct.
And previously, I think you testified that during the trainings out there, you would run the medical lane, as you put it.
Yes.
And also, I think you testified that he would also provide instruction on firearms. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so with Mr. Bellar not there on the 9th of August, who's providing the firearms training?
So it went between myself and Ty Garvin.
Okay, Ty Garvin attends. Okay, and tell us some of the things that are practiced that day.
Again, reflexive dryer drill, reflexive fire drills, room clearing, and then more vehicle assault, vehicle ambush.
Okay, about how long does the training last?
It's about or so. Yeah.
Okay. And tell us, if you will, does Mr. Fox attend this training?
He does, yes.
Okay, does he go through the firearms training that you described?
He does, yes.
Does he bring any weapons to train with?
Yes.
And what does he bring?
He has his AR-15.
Okay, does he have any sidearms, if you remember?
He periodically carried a sidearm. I can't recall if he had one on or not.
Okay, does he have his bulletproof vest, his kit, if you call it?
He does have his kit, yes.
Okay, and does he stay during the course of the training?
He does, yes.
Are you, do you have a recording device with you that day?
Yes.
Are they practicing this operational security where you got to leave your phone in the car?
Yes.
And you have a secondary recording device?
I do.
And after the training, is there any discussion, is there any circle up in conversation with Mr. Fox that includes Mr. Morrison?
Yes, there was.
Okay. I'm sorry. That's one. Thank you. we're gonna play some audio here, like you to read along, and then I'll ask you a couple of questions afterwards, okay? Okay.
When I was in teams, I did up, we had 7 or 8.
I got the warden.
We had a lot more intel.
Small, a lot of guys that have chemistry out there.
And whoever,
I'm in, Sterling Heights.
whoever we
Say
do,
where you at.
we have to get everybody on board.
You do with taking time. Taking what? I had people. Taking them fall off the big year that you do it. Listen, I am. You on board? Yeah. I don't want to wait for them to come from the call us. That one's too fucking late. And then what we're doing for fighting for our lives.
So we need to be very careful on how we do it, because what we do is spark off.
Yeah, now we don't want the wrong way.
We don't want it to go the wrong way.
How else can we put out a positive image that we're not doing the fucking terrorists, but we're doing?
Give it up.
We got some training for motherfuckers.
Give up the whole image thing, dude.
There's no way.
There'll always be a villain in somebody's story.
We'll have to go to my record. Think like that.
We find out he's on board with it.
When you want to do it down like that, we find out
We got with
terrorists. We're taking, once the recon comes back, I don't know, maybe 8, 7, 8,
8 at the most.
8 at the most.
8 at the most.
No more than 8.
Get too many.
Well, then you need to figure out where
They're starting to worry about too many guys and boots on ground, and you know what I mean, so.
Do you remember that conversation, Dan?
Briefly, yes,
Okay, where'd that happen at?
the unit property,
Whereabouts on the property there?
towards the front of the house.
You go to the first page, please, Dan. There, down a little bit, please. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There you go. Where, 5 from the bottom, I'm sorry, 7 from the bottom, you see where it says Fox, and he says, you good with taking high? Mr. Morrison says, taking what? Mr. Fox says, high asset people, making them fall off the face of the earth. Are you good with this? And Mr. Moray says, listen, I am. Mr. Fox says, are you on board? And Mr. Morrison responds, you know I'm down. Is that what Mr. Morrison said?
Yes,
Okay, when Mr. Fox is talking about making high asset people fall off the face of the earth, what did you think he was talking about?
the governor.
Dan, I want to thank you very much for being patient with my questions. I'm going to yield the witness judge.
What order you gentlemen want to go in?
Not go first, Sean, if you just give me 1 sec.
Sure.
All right, sir, good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, Joy, good afternoon. Okay. You joined the Wolverine Watchmen March 7th, 2020, correct?
Yes, sir.
You joined the group because you were looking for a training group, correct?
I joined the Wire because it was for training. The Wolverine Watchmen Facebook page was just for content. They were pro Second Amendment.
Now, pro Second Amendment, there's pro police, pro Second Amendment, correct?
Fair to say yes.
There's anti-police, pro Second Amendment, correct?
Fair to say yes.
You describe yourself as pro police, Second Amendment.
Pro Constitution.
You describe yourself as pro or anti-police, sir?
There is some bad police out there. I'm not pro for them. There are some good police out there for them.
You went through the vetting, correct?
Yes.
You didn't find anything objectionable about the questions, correct?
The vetting, no.
You answered the questions
Truthfully, yes.
and you were admitted into the group.
I was.
And at this time, you were also, let's get this straight. You work for a trucking company, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your paycheck is from a trucking company,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Your paycheck is not from the post office.
No.
Right. And you also do firearms training, correct?
I provide training. Yes.
And one of the things you were doing at the time where you were looking for people that had locations in which you could fire. And if you could bring a group of people that would pay, you would allow the residence owners to train for free.
So if I would doing a CPL class, I didn't have property to hold the class. So if you came to me and said, hey, I want to do a CPL, on my own, you let me utilize your property, I don't charge you. People that are taking it, I charge them $100.
Now, you're only on this wire chat, and this is the wire main chat, correct?
After the vetting, yes.
You're only on there for a few hours before you see this thing about downloading this app to get law enforcement addresses.
No, sir. It was immediately. I went from the vetting to the main Watchman page. That's when Pete made the statement about we need to find out where cops' addresses are, so we would reverse red flag. The next statement he said was download the app Onyx Hunt so we can share it.
Are you familiar with the name Dave Norris?
I'm familiar with it, yes.
Okay. Now, you sure this is Pete Musical that said this, and not Dave Norris?
It was under Grandpa.
Okay. Now, you take this statement and you contact a friend of yours as law enforcement.
The initial statement of wanting to contact or find the addresses of law enforcement, I felt that concerning after going through a vetting process from the initial post on Facebook to, hey, if you're wanting.
Yeah, I would object. This answer is not responsive. My question to you, sir, is after reading that statement, you called a friend of yours from law enforcement. Yes or no? Yes or no question?
Witness doesn't have to be limited to yes or no. That's number one. Number two, to object to it as an answer being non-responsive in the middle of the answer, you have to let the witness finish the answer before that objection can be lodged.
You're very sorry, Your Honor. So from seeing the Facebook page and wanting to do training, then going through the vetting process and then seeing the statements on the main page, that's what concerned me. And I reached out to my friend.
Your friend doesn't take a picture of this statement that you attribute to Mr. Musical.
He does not know.
You are then put in contact with two FBI agents. You meet with them.
I do, yes.
At this point, the statement that you attribute to Mr. Musical is no longer in your phone.
No, it had auto deleted the parameters that they had in front of the app deleted after a certain amount of time.
There's other things that are in the phone that you show the FBI, correct?
There is, yes.
And they take pictures of those.
They took pictures of the entire conversation that was happening.
Now, at some point, you're asked to go back to the group to be a source of information for the FBI.
That is correct.
You go back into these chat logs, correct?
I maintained activity. I wasn't communicating with them, but the conversations were continuing during the entire time.
And this would include, this is about March 23rd, correct?
It's fair to say.
You were in the chat March 23rd.
I was.
It's fair that from March 23rd to the time this investigation ended, Mr. Musical doesn't post anything in there about finding law enforcement addresses or downloading this hunting app.
From the very beginning he did, but after that I can't recall it anymore.
Okay, so from the very beginning, he posted this, but for 7 months, so to speak, he never posted anything about this again.
Getting to finding the addresses?
Yeah.
The Onyx app, I don't recall.
Now, there's a training that takes place that you go to at the end of March, correct?
That's correct, sir.
You learn in the end of March about this residence, this 800 Munich Road residence, correct?
I do, yes.
You learn that Pete lives at that residence, but does not own that residence, correct?
I wasn't under 100% understanding of who owned the house. It was my understanding it was Joe's house, but I don't know how he came about to owning it or those parameters.
You learn that there are no phones in the firing area of this Munich address.
That's correct.
You've been to gun ranges before, correct?
Yeah.
Having phones out while firing weapons is a safety concern, correct?
Well, it depends on what kind of training you do. Me personally, when I go and shoot distance shooting, like 1 to 0 a rifle, if I don't have a high magnifier on it, I can set my phone up, take shots at the target, and then zoom in, whether it's just the camera itself, and I can.
Sir, this is in their backyard, correct?
You asked Phil if the safety hazard.
This address is
I'm letting
a home, correct?
What, sir?
This address is a home, correct?
It is, yes.
they're around the side and back of their property, correct?
Correct.
And the back of the property, after, what about 10, 20 yards, there's a river.
There is, yes.
You weren't doing any long distance shooting at this property.
It was border shooting, but the
Thank
means for not having the phones out wasn't for photos or anything, it was for OPSEC measures.
Now, you claim that Mr. Musical makes this statement about this Molotov cocktail.
He does make that claim, yes.
You don't know if that statement is true or not.
I take it at face value for him telling me that he did it, that he did it.
Matter of fact, you tell your handling agents, you believe Mr. Musical is trying to provoke a law enforcement response.
I do believe so, yes.
And you agree that Mr. Musical is training and is not leading any trainings at that first training.
The first training, no.
Now, you go to a second training. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
This training is not recorded either.
No, no, sir.
At this training, Mr. Musical talks about the governor's address. Is that correct?
Correct, so yes.
The context of that was to protest at our home, correct?
It could be a protest, a show of force, intimidation. I don't know what his means are wanting to do for it, but they're not good.
Isn't it true the group was discussing her stay-at-home order at that end of March training?
I'm saving your question.
Isn't it true the group is discussing her stay-at-home order at the end of March training?
There's been discussions of that, yes.
Isn't it true that they were discussing her hypocrisy because when she issued the stay-at-home order, she had a graduation party at her home for one of her family members?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. There was a protest that was attended in April. A summer protest, correct?
Yes, sir.
First protest was Operation Gridlock. That's fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Now, it's your testimony that these individuals go with their guns and their kits, correct?
They do, yes.
Now, you testified that Mr. Musical had some contact with a state trooper.
Yes, sir.
You were wearing a wire at this time, correct?
I don't believe so.
You were debriefing with the FBI agents every 2 or 3 days at this time, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were telling them what was going on that you thought was important, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever tell them about this interaction that Mr. Musical claimed to have had with the state trooper?
I don't believe so, no.
You were and from April 15th to April 15th to about the first week of May, you met with them about 7 times, correct?
That's fair to say, yes.
Never brought it up.
No, sir.
You were still in the main chat in April, on about April 15th, when this is alleged to have happened, correct?
Yes, sir.
In the main chat, isn't it true that Boogaloo Bunyan says, saw my gunny sergeant at the protest? Pete Musical says, LMAO, when you see somebody you know, oh shit, correct?
I believe so, yes.
He didn't say anything about, yeah, and I threatened to kill her.
I did not know.
He didn't say anything about, yeah, and I cussed her out, right?
No.
Now, let's go to the second protest in April, the 30th, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you believe, your testimony, that these individuals on April 15th were stacking up and banging on the door of the Capitol.
No, that was on the 30th.
That was on the 30th, correct? And you're reporting this to the FBI agents that you're listening.
They made numerous statements throughout the protest. They were going to take the Capitol. I broke away at one point and spoke that they were going to take the Capitol, and then they were counting down, hey, 45 minutes, we're going to take the Capitol. In a half hour, 15 minutes, we're going to stack up and take the Capitol. At which point they do. They were gathering up alongside the building of the Capitol to gain entry, and then they were allowed to come in.
And you believe that by relaying this information to the FBI, they were able to de-escalate the situation and let them in the Capitol?
I don't know what they did on the other end. I was just maintaining, eyes and ears of what was going on. I felt it concerning what was being discussed and what was potentially going forward.
Were you aware that April 30th was a pre-planned protest?
Yes,
Were you aware that part of the pre-planned protest was to enter the Capitol?
No,
Were you aware that part of the pre-planned protest was to enter the Capitol with guns?
they can exercise their constitutional rights to carry their guns inside the Capitol. As far as what they were being pre-planned for, I was not aware of that.
You never saw the invitation.
I don't recall it, no.
And when you get into the Capitol, state police are there,
They are.
media is there,
There's some, yes.
people are taking pictures.
Yes,
Now, you testified that at this April 15th protest, when they get up to the second or third floor of the rotunda, it's Mr. Musical that's screaming 1, 2, and trying to get in,
he's yelling 2-step forward.
2 step forwards. Did you know Lieutenant Green?
No, I did not know him.
Did you know any of the troopers that were in the photograph? Did you ever see the photograph of Mr. Musical at the,
I remember it being distributed, yes, but I don't know any of the troopers there.
where were you? Because it's fair to say you're not in that photograph, right?
No, sir.
Where were you when that photograph was taken?
Behind where Pete was at, he moved up to the front lines, if you want to address it as that. I stayed with Paul during the time of this.
Approximately how many feet were you from Pete?
Hard to say, it's been a long time.
Would you agree that the troopers that were in that front line would have a better vantage point of who was yelling than you did?
Yes,
And so if somebody attributed statements to somebody else, you wouldn't dispute that?
no.
The trainings that occur on April 30th occur, and at this point, you have been asked to lead some of the trainings, correct?
Been asked to assist in the trainings, yes.
When May rolls around, it's fair to say that there's several chat groups that the Wolverine Watchmen have, correct?
That is correct.
There's the leadership chat,
Yes, sir.
armory chat,
Yes, sir.
main chat,
Yes, sir.
vetting chat,
Yes, sir.
and this is from March, April into May. Is that correct?
That was throughout, yes.
Mr. Musical was only in the main chats and the army chats at this time.
I can't recall if he was in the other one. I know he wasn't in the vetting or the leadership.
In early May is a new group discussed around May 1st. Somebody makes a complaint somebody says to the group that they've been getting a lot of complaints about Joe and Pete. They'd like to go discreet and not have to deal with the protest. Remember that?
I believe that's what Paul brought up with starting his own group.
That was in early May.
It could have been, I'm not sure on the timeline.
In May, the QRF was developed, correct?
We had QRF groups that were set up. I'm not sure if you're pertaining to Paul's QRF.
Mr. Musical was never in the QRF.
I don't believe so, no.
There was trainings in May, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
At the Munich Road address?
Correct.
Talked about going to locations with this QRF.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Musical was never there?
No.
He was never part of those chats.
I don't believe so, no.
There's a discussion about having mandatory FTX training on June 14th.
That was the day of the purge, yes.
On June 14th, you have conversations with Mr. Musical prior to the training that were recorded, correct?
I do, yes.
But Mr. Musical does not train on June 14th.
He shoots, yes, sir.
June 14th, you're in the main chat still?
Yes, sir.
You remember a conversation in the main chat? Grandpa, you guys, I'm sorry, I missed training today. Beaker, you Gucci. Remember that?
No.
With looking at it, refresh your recollection?
He would-
I'm not supposed to witness.
Go ahead.
We have it, yes, sir.
Pull it up. You know where it's at.
Oh, it's not a-
Oh, okay.
It's in
Just
the
go
middle.
ahead.
No, that's not. an
Yeah.
exhibit.
Okay. Go ahead.
I've got a question. Thank you. Have you had an opportunity to review the main chat logs from June 14th, 2020?
I do, yes.
Is it fair to say that grandpa, and who's grandpa,
That's Pete.
sends out a message that says, you guys, I'm sorry I missed training today?
The training, yes, but he was there for the training. He was present at the location.
That's what's in the message, correct, sir?
The training, yes.
And we've talked about who Ty Garvin is.
Yes.
Ty Garvin responds, you Gucci.
Yeah.
You Gucci means you good.
Yes, sir.
On June 14th, there's a discussion about a voice clip that Adam Fox sends through Facebook. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You listen to the voice clip.
Amongst others, yes.
The voice clip is an invitation, one, to meet with Adam Fox, and two, to kind of train to fill each other out. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
You indicated you wanted to meet Adam Fox,
Yes.
and there was a conversation between you and Mr. Musical about that.
Yes, it was.
Fair to say Mr. Musical was shocked that you wanted to meet Adam Fox after listening to that voice message.
I won't say shocked. He was enthusiastic.
He said, huh, when you told him that you wanted to meet Adam Fox, his first response was, huh? You do?
Well, huh, I taught very deep and kind of low, so it was more like a huh. Yeah, I'm down for me. You are? Yes.
And he asked you, do you know what he's about?
Just briefly about what Joe's putting out, and then he elaborated more. He's been talking with Adam Fox on what he's about.
And after this conversation, you still say that you want to go, correct?
For the FBI, I think it would be a concerning person that they might want to know about, yes.
In that conversation, Mr. Musical never said he wanted to go,
Call if he said that or not.
but we have the recording, correct?
You do, yes.
And you have conversations with Joe about this too, correct?
I believe so, yes.
There are additional protests that occur in June, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Some of those protests you go to, some you don't.
There was, yes.
Pardon me?
There was, yes.
So at this point, there's been at least 2 protests in April that you went to, correct?
Correct.
There's been 2 protests and 3 QRF deployments in May.
Yes, sir.
And up to June 28th, there's been 3 additional protests, some that you go to and some that you don't go to, correct?
That's correct.
These will be Black Lives Matter and other protests that occurred at the Capitol.
I believe so, yes.
To your knowledge, all these protests, the members that go are armed,
They are, yes.
and in none of these protests did they hurt any law enforcement member.
Fortunately, they did not.
Now, June 28th, well, let's back up. June 20th, you go to the vac shack, correct?
That was the yes.
And this is the meeting you wanted to go to because you were helping the FBI.
This was a meeting we were invited to from the June 18th protests where we met Adam, and he invited us to come to the back shack with ideas.
And you decided to go. Nobody made you do
No, amongst the others as well.
it now. Mr. Musical isn't there.
He was not know. They had I think a family trip to the zoo. They wanted to go, but they couldn't do it.
June 28th, well, you were on Facebook and Wire with Pete at this time, correct?
Yes.
June 28th. There's no photographs posted about a family trip to the zoo.
No, but there's audio of them. I've heard the audio in reviewing it that they wanted to go, and there was the going to the Potter Park Zoo, I believe, or a zoo, and they wouldn't be able to go.
There's nothing in the Wire chats about them going to the zoo that day.
The Wire, no.
Now, on June 28th, you go to this unit road training, And you go to this training in Munich on June 28th,
That might be a day I'm not. Go ahead.
the day Adam Fox is supposed to be there.
Yes, sir.
At this time, you have 2 recording devices.
Yes, sir.
You have a conversation, or there's a conversation that happens near the cars prior to everybody training, correct?
I believe so.
So this is not in the shooting area.
No, the shooting area happened behind the house at a greater distance. The vehicle staging area was off to the, I believe, the east of the house.
And this is where you say Mr. Musical makes this statement about being down for this group, correct?
What's the context behind it?
Testified that at this point, Mr. Musical made a statement that if you're not down with this group and down with the training, you need to leave.
Yes, sir, he did. That was in front of the house with a large gathering of people.
Right. That's not recorded.
Say again?
That's not recorded.
No, sir.
So let me back up here. The original statement that you claim Mr. Musical made about finding law enforcement officers' addresses, there's no documentation of that.
There was not. That was the very first communication I seen with him. That's when I reported it up to law enforcement.
This altercation that you claim he told you about that happened with him and the state trooper at the Capitol is not captured on any audio recording. Even though they talk about seeing this trooper in the chat, nobody says anything about him threatening this trooper.
That's correct.
He's not arrested for supposedly threatening to kill a state trooper while he's in possession of an AR-15 and a handgun.
People at a protest, they were very, I want to say energetic, very emotional up there, and I feel the police were giving them a great deal of discretion.
Yeah, I would object as he speculated what the police were doing.
Sustained.
He was not arrested for that, correct?
It was not now.
As a matter of fact, I almost forgot this. You were text messaging with your handlers all throughout this investigation, correct?
It was, yes.
And not once in these text messages did you say, hey, Pete just told me he threatened the state trooper.
I did not.
Now, when you saw a post about him supposedly looking for law enforcement addresses, you called the police immediately, correct?
I did, yes.
But when you claim that he told you he threatened to kill a state trooper, you don't text the handling agents that you've been texting throughout the entire investigation.
No.
People in the group referred to Mr. Musical as Crazy Pete, correct?
They did.
From very early on, he talked about getting an arrest warrant.
You mentioned it, yes.
He even talked about how he had tried to call a federal judge to see about getting arrest warrants.
I believe so, yes.
On a couple of occasions before the protest, he called or reported to the group that he called Michigan State Police to get the rules of the protest.
I believe so. I can't recall.
He also posted in April a clip of a warning from Michigan State Police that protesters who are armed must obey all rules or be prosecuted in accordance with our laws. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Posted that to the group before he went. Before all those protests, he made sure that the group knew the rules of the protest.
I'm not sure what his intentions were behind it.
But he posted those things, correct?
He did, yes.
Something happens between Paul and Joe's wife on June 28th, correct?
That's correct.
Now there's a new group start,
Yes.
and there's new chats that are starting.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Musical isn't part of that chat.
He is not.
In those chats from July on, they actually complained about his presence at protests.
Pete's
Yes.
presence. Yes, they were wanting to limit their social media presence, but Pete wanted to be like the face of the movement out there.
They complained about things that he was saying. He had a podcast.
I think they participated on a podcast. I'm not sure.
He was complaining about things. They were complaining about things he was saying on this podcast that he at least participated in.
Right. They were feeling that he was lacking OPSEC, yes.
He does not go to Cambria, Wisconsin. He does not go.
Cambria, though.
He does not go to any of the trainings in Fowlerville. There's a meeting in Peebles, Ohio.
Yes, sir.
You go to the meeting in Peebles, Ohio.
Yeah.
Pete does not go.
He does not know.
In July, we talked about this meeting that occurred in July.
July 7th.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
A member, Jared, talked about Pete's plan.
Pete's and App.
And he talks about his concerns with Pete's plan. Even going back further, at the June 3rd leadership meeting, Pete receives no leadership position, correct?
Again, Joe stated that he served as counsel to him. They shared the same residence. There was no point for Pete to be on the leadership chat.
Pete received no official position.
You know, he stated that 60 to 70% of the ideas that came through the Wolverine Watchmen was his idea.
That's what Pete told you?
He's told me that.
Okay, well, we'll get to all the things that Peter said in a second.
Yes, sir.
At some point, there are a bonfire chat, council chat, the brothers chat, the fuck around, find out chat, correct?
What is it?
Mr. Musical isn't part of any of those chats.
No, sir.
The chat platform is the Wire, or at this time is Wire, correct?
That's the main chat application, like Facebook Messenger. That's Facebook app. Wire is the app that we're using.
You need a water.
This has something going on.
Okay.
Members of the QRF and Adam Fox moved to the Threema app, correct?
With concerns after Paul left, yes.
Mr. Musical is not part of those chats.
He's not no.
The complaints about Pete continue to occur. Is that correct?
He continued to want to be the face of the movement and continue going to protest. Ty had mentioned that if we want to continue on with our plan, that we should distance ourselves from them and profile.
And there was specific instructions to not discuss things with Pete.
I can't recall if that was specific or not.
Was Pete included in any of those discussions with Ty?
I can't recall now.
At some point, you have a conversation with Adam Fox, correct?
Fair to say?
Adam Fox complains about Pete and Joe not showing up.
Yes,
Ty Garvin complains about Pete and Joe not showing up.
I believe so, yes.
And at some point in, I believe it's September, in a private chat with you and Adam Fox, he says to you, I've never even seen Pete run with a gun.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and you say no comment on that, or something to that effect. I'm not specifically quoting you,
I can't recall.
Oh, but you remember Adam Fox making that statement to you.
Vaguely, yes.
Now, through the time that you've met Pete, and it's fair to say that you've testified 3 different times in this court, correct?
Yes, sir.
Twice in another court.
Yes, sir.
You've met with the prosecutors, both these prosecutors and other prosecutors several times.
Yes, sir.
Testified at Antrim County.
I have. No, not Antrim, no.
Okay. Not aware that Mr. Musical ever had this hunt app on his phone.
I don't know if he did or not, no.
He also claimed to have thrown a Molotov cocktail through a state trooper's home.
He claimed that, yes.
He claimed to be a 7th-degree black belt.
I don't remember that ever being put out, no.
Claimed to have an AR-15 that he put thousands of rounds through.
Yes.
He routinely posted biblical scriptures and sent even you biblical scriptures.
He did, yes.
After protests, he would talk about how he wanted to kick off the boog or was trying to start the boog.
Yes.
Talked about sinkholes and earthquakes.
Possibly.
In September, I think it's September 4th, you received a text message in which you are told call Pete, or to tee it up with Pete, excuse me, and to treat him like the leader he claims to be.
I vaguely remember that, yes.
And you did that, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And that conversation went on about 30, 40 minutes.
A phone call?
Yep.
It might have.
Fair to say, during the course of this investigation, Mr. Musical has come into contact with law enforcement at least 10 times.
That's fair to say.
You never saw him attack, harm a law enforcement agent at any of those occasions.
He did not, but he was building up. He wanted to recruit people, get his message out there. That's why he was wanting to be the face of the movement. He wanted to look like revolutionariness and not a terrorist. So he wanted to keep the movement of people behind them when we did this, or when they did this.
He talked about arrest warrants from March all the way till October.
But you can't arrest the governor, so you can do a recall on it, on her.
He talked about arrest warrants from March all the way to October, correct?
Didn't happen there, yes.
He talked about arrest warrants
Yes, sir.
from March to October.
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
I would be ready for a break if Your Honor was so inclined, even 5-10 minutes.
No, I was gonna limit it to 10. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll explain when we're all done, but there's an important matter that's come up, so we're gonna be knocking off at 4 o'clock today. But we'll take 10 minutes so we can get some more in.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Please be seated. Ballard?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Dan.
Afternoon, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen. Into the new millennium. Attorney Ballard, computer in the courtroom. First, hold on to your hat. There's no telling where this will go. Dan, I'm gonna try and, well, some of my questions may seem repetitive, okay? We've got 3 different defendants. There's some certain ground that Mr. Johnson may have chewed through, but I'm gonna, at some point, go through again. I'm not trying to trip you up with certain things, but for the record, I've got a separate client, Mr. Morrison, okay? So let's just keep that in mind. And there's a few things that I'm gonna go over, I guess, because I think they may come out, acronyms such as they are, so I want to cover those so the jury understands where we're going, okay? Are you familiar with the term MOUT?
I am, sir.
And what does that stand for?
Military operations and urban terrain.
Okay. Can I assume from your Army service, Army training, at some point in time, you did MOUT training?
I did, yes.
What is the purpose of MOUT training?
Training in urban environments, so city.
Okay, so if you can tell me, what base did you train this on?
Fort Stewart, Georgia.
Okay, is Fort Stewart an urban environment?
It's
It's an Army post, correct?
I mean, the 3 brigades are 77,000 people.
Okay. The facility that you trained at for MOUT, is that right there in the center of the base where headquarters are, or is it out a little ways?
It's in an impact area, so on a range.
Okay, so it's not even though you're training for urban terrain, it's not actually in an urban setting, correct? It's a mock-up?
Yes, sir.
Would you agree with that?
Exactly.
Okay, so the fact that training may or may not have gone on with a mock-up of a house or a building or whatever, that's not indicative of necessarily anything. Would you agree?
Fair to say.
Okay. In all the training that you attended, and when I say that, I'm talking about in regards to the Watchmen, was there ever a specific setup that was designed to resemble some specific structure?
Gain entry to a structure, yes.
Right, but it wasn't set up, correct me if I'm wrong, to resemble the Capitol building.
No, it was very diverse. So you could a magnitude of, if you want to do a double fit door or center fed door, left fed door, right fed door. So accommodate for all these urban type settings that you might.
Okay, very good. We've heard terminology, CO, XO. What is CO?
Commanding officer,
What's the XO?
executive officer.
What's the XO's position?
He's like administrator. He supports the commanding officer.
If the commanding officer is not present, who's in charge?
It would delegate down.
It's not automatically the XO?
It depends on the parameters of it. We had, if you're talking the military,
I'm talking the military.
well, the company commander, he's in charge of all operations of that company.
Mhm.
Your company first sergeant is in charge for personnel.
Okay, but who is ultimately, let's just pick an arbitrary company. Company A, 3rd Battalion, right? They've got a company commander, right?
They do.
And he's the CO, right?
That is,
And if the CO goes on 30 days leave, who's in charge of that company?
they would laterally up the XO.
The XO would be in charge, right? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, there was I believe you testified, a leadership group that came together to pick a leader. Is that correct? For the Wolverine Watchmen?
Well, one was already established. It was just going more for like formalities for the people that are coming in.
Okay,
And they vetted people in there. They knew there was a leadership structure. And even during training that they were aware of the leadership structure.
but didn't there come a point in time when the Watchmen voted you their leader?
The Watchman, no, Paul recommended for me.
So you were not voted to be the leader?
No.
Really? do you recall testifying in this court in February of this year
I do,
before His Honor Judge Wilson? Is that correct?
yes.
And I'm going to refer to, if I may, and please bear with me, I realize the struggle. For Mr. and Madam Prosecutor, I am referring to the transcript of the hearing on February 28th. I'm beginning on page 61. Line specifically 11. You were asked a question. I'm going to paraphrase down, but what was your position, right? And I'm going to, if I may approach, Your Honor, I'm just presenting him with the transcript.
Sure.
Nothing, but I'm going to do this the complicated way, okay? Can you read the question on line 14 for me?
Question for becoming a leader.
And what does line 15 say?
They voted me into the leadership position.
Okay, so didn't you just tell me there was no vote?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what the answer was. What was can you read the last sentence again louder, please?
They voted me into the leadership position.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I just
Can we
asked.
get
if you-
some indication as to when that happened?
That was February
The
20.
transcript is from February 28th of
Well,
this
no,
year.
I know, I mean, from the witness as to
Oh,
when this
when did
happened.
this occur? The vote? When did the vote occur?
We had the leadership meeting June 3rd.
June 3rd, correct? And that's when I believe you testified under direct, right? That they came together and you said you were not voted the leader. They just recommended it.
Paul recommended yes.
Okay, but there was actually a vote, wasn't there?
I don't recall them being all in favor for Dan being in raising hands.
Didn't you just read your own words from the transcript?
Yes.
And didn't you testify that there was a vote? And you said on that date to this court, I was voted into the leadership position?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I don't want to go down the wrong road. Oh, I'm sorry. A couple more things I wanted to cover real quick on in terms of acronyms. DOD, do you know what that stands for?
Department of Defense.
Department of Defense, right? And Department of Defense oversees the Army, is that correct?
That's correct.
So the Army is part of the DOD, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were in the Army, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we heard testimony about your service. I believe you testified you were honorably discharged, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And maybe not here, but you were honorably discharged, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What does that mean?
Served your enlistment,
Okay.
you separated honorably.
What does one have to do or not do to be honorably discharged?
Maintain the standard.
Maintain the standard. So, and I believe I used this earlier with another witness, but if someone enters the Army, they sign up for 4 years, and it doesn't have to be the Army, pick a service. They go in, they're a clerk typist, and they spend 4 years sitting at a desk at Camp Lejeune or Fort Bliss or Lackland Air Force Base, and they type their stuff. And at the end of the 4 years, their term is up and they've not gotten in any trouble. What kind of discharge do they likely get?
An honorable.
Honorable discharge, right? So when we say honorably discharged, I think for civilians, right, they get this impression that, wow, something great happened. But in reality, right, you showed up for work, didn't get in trouble. Is that a correct assessment?
We served our country with distinction, yes.
Okay. Necessarily with distinction, or we just didn't get in trouble? I'm not referring to you, right? I didn't say you got in any trouble. I'm just saying in general, right? An honorable discharge. I went to work every day. I didn't get in trouble. Correct? Okay, fair enough. And can you tell me what a DD 214 is?
Say a rundown of your entry date, your exit date, the rank that you were, any kind of awards and services that you had.
Okay. So if somebody was given a good conduct medal, it would be on there, right?
It would be yes.
If they were given Army commendation, be on there, right?
Yes, sir.
If they were given a Purple Heart, it would be on there, right?
Yes, sir.
Service campaign ribbon would be on there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you found the Watchman, or it found you, right? Tell me about that. How did you come in contact the first time you saw anything about the Watchman? What were you doing?
I was scrolling through Facebook, so the algorithm that was on there, it was a suggested page.
Okay, so you had likely typed something or clicked on something. I think they call it clickbait. Again, I'm a computer idiot, but I think that's the terminology, right? That sets up and feeds other things to bring up that you may or may not be interested in. Is that a correct assessment?
That's fair to say, yes.
And is it fair to say that that's what you were doing the day you first encountered anything to do with the Watchman?
I wasn't searching for anything specific. I was just scrolling through the
Right.
newsfeed that was on there, yes.
And it just popped up?
As a recommendation, yes.
Okay. And you clicked on it?
I did.
And this is on Facebook page, right?
Yes, sir.
And the first thing you saw was what?
Pages stuff. They were like pro Second Amendment. There was some questions that was on that group. It was a closed group.
What does that mean? Can you tell me?
So like an open group is you can just click on it. You can see the contents that's being provided on the page, and you can like the page and continue to follow it. With a closed group, the administrator on there puts in a few questions that you have to answer. After the administrator accepts or denies you, then you can see the content.
So you click on it, it asks you some questions.
Yes.
How many questions?
I believe those three.
Do you know what those questions were?
I can't recall what they were now.
So if I understand what you just said, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it asks you three questions roughly, right? I think you said you don't know exactly, but if there was three questions, you answer them, and then it lets you in to the closed page, correct?
Upon the administrator viewing the questions and answers that I provided, or the answers that I provided, they could either accept or deny me.
When you say they, who is they?
Whoever's the administrator or administrators on that specific.
So, so there could be multiple administrators, is that correct?
On various pages that I've been on, there's been other ones on this specific page. I didn't really look in to see who the administrator was.
Okay, so you answer the questions and you have no idea, correct me if I'm wrong, who answers and lets you in, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So then you're into their page, and what do you see?
I was just there for content.
I didn't ask what you were there for.
Okay.
Okay, what did you see?
A post made about training.
Post made about training. Now, I believe you testified that you are a trainer. Is that correct?
I was a firearms instructor, yes.
Okay. So what kind of training do you do?
Predominantly was the CPL classes for here in the state of Michigan. And then I provided instruction on carbines, ARs, or AKs, shotguns, and pistols.
All legal weapons?
They are.
Okay. What do you get paid for something like that?
It varies. The company I was working for at the time, they would vary their prices in training. Some would be up to $500 if I was doing a CPL class. I wasn't in for the money. It was just working with people that were on the exercise of Second Amendment right and providing education and knowledge to them.
Okay. Now, so the Watchmen at that time, when you read this, okay, they're pro Second Amendment.
They are.
But I believe you said there was good pro Second Amendment and bad pro Second Amendment. Is that what you said earlier today?
Answering the other council
Right.
questions, yes. I mean, people have their various views on law enforcement or the sentiment that might be out there. Is there
Okay.
good people out there? Yes. Is there good people out there? Yes.
Okay. Are these people allowed to have that opinion one way or the other?
They're allowed to have an opinion, yes.
Okay, so when you say there's good Second Amendment and bad Second Amendment, that's your interpretation, correct?
Yes,
You would agree that that might not be somebody else's interpretation, correct?
yes,
And that's absolutely okay in this country, isn't it?
thankfully, yes.
Okay. So you're on this page, you answer the questions. An administrator lets you in. What did you see that immediately gave you this need to call Officer Ramirez?
So that was leaving Facebook. They said, if you want to do some serious training, you need to download the app Wire. I downloaded the app. I went through their vetting questions that they proposed to me. I answered those questions. And then going from the vetting portion now to the main chat and seeing the conversation that was taking place there concerned me.
Okay. What, were you done? I didn't want to cut you off, but were you done with that answer?
I was viewing it as they were performing a layer of OPSEC, and they were holding a vetting process to take people from the main page that was just wanting to do training,
Okay.
going through the vetting process and then into Wire is what concerned me.
How many questions was that vetting process?
For myself, 4, maybe 5.
And what were those questions?
What my views were on the Constitution, law enforcement, the kind of training that I had, any background, whether it was military or anything
Okay.
like that.
And that, those questions raised a concern for you?
No, I answered those questions. So I was perfectly fine with that.
Okay. So what, if you recall, what was the question about law enforcement?
What my views were on law enforcement at the time.
And do you know what you answered?
That we have,
And I'm not trying to hold you to a verbatim, right? But what did you answer?
paraphrasing, that we have an issue with law enforcement at the time, and that I felt that we have an issue with kind of home discipline, that we work more. Kind of the gist of that answer,
Home discipline. What do you mean by that?
like upbringing, discipline your children, being present in their lives, educating them on the difference between right and wrong.
Okay. So you go through this and then what happens?
After the question on the Constitution,
Uh-huh.
I swore north to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Okay.
Ty said that was good enough, and I was brought from the vetting process into the actual Wolverine Watchmen main page.
Now, that's when you get through this after Ty, you said Ty Garvin lets you in, and that's when you saw something that alerted you?
So once I made it into the main page, I had to talk for a blank, because I couldn't see the conversation that was taking place. So I had, thanks for the ad. And then a statement was made about target law enforcement getting their addresses for a reverse flag. To reach out to my friend.
Okay. But as Mr. Johnson asked you, we don't have a photograph, correct me if I'm wrong, of someone telling you to go to, I believe you called it the Onyx app, is that correct?
No, sir, we don't.
Do you know what the Onyx app is?
I've taken a look into it. It's also been a suggestion on Facebook to app to view. But I did not kind of research it. I understood that you could find somebody that might own the property on it, and it could show you what the property lines is. My overall understanding on it is for hunters, that they can see if they're on various state land or who owns.
So it's a hunting app, you would say. That's your understanding.
Vaguely understanding of this.
Okay. Sounds pretty legal.
Oh, it's perfectly legal app, yes.
And Wire, is that perfectly legal to your understanding? I'm not trying to make you a lawyer or an officer, but right to your understanding, being on Wire, using Wire is perfectly legal, correct?
Sir.
Okay. So you reach out to Officer Ramirez. Officer Ramirez does what he does, and the next thing you know, you get a call from Agent Chambers and Agent Impala, or who called you?
I received a text message from Special Agent Chambers.
Okay. And you meet with them, right? They look through your phone?
Yes, sir.
They photograph anything to do with this Onyx app?
At that point, the way that their procedures were set up on the Wire app is they auto deleted after a 4-hour span.
Okay.
So those conversations were no longer there.
And Officer Ramirez didn't think to take a picture of this to show us, did he?
No.
Okay. So you talk to the officer, excuse me, the agent, and they tell you you can't help out or assist. Is that correct?
Correct.
They tell you you can't be part of the planning. Is that correct? They tell you about training.
Serve as like a range safety officer.
Okay. Did there come a time when someone from the Watchmen asked you to actually do the training?
They asked to assist furthermore with the training, yes.
Okay. Fortunately, I'm gonna go back to this thing. In just a second. I apologize. So, in your estimation, who was the leader of the Watchmen?
Joe Morrison
And why was he the leader?
said that he set up the group that was held at his property.
Okay. And why did he set this group up again?
In response to a gun charge that he had.
A gun charge. Do you know if it was a felony or a misdemeanor?
I'm not sure on the level of it.
Okay. Would it surprise you if he pled out to a simple misdemeanor and just paid a fine?
So I wouldn't necessarily surprise me on the verdict of it. He just told me about what he would stop for and the reason for stopping.
Okay. What was Joe's position besides leader? I mean, what was he tasked? What did he do?
He just held the training at his residence. He gathered the individuals for going to the protests.
And in doing this, he was the social media guy? Would you call him that?
He was networking and he explained that he had contacts on a national level.
Okay. And who was doing the training?
I didn't hear the last answer.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
But that he was networking with contacts on a national level for the Boogaloo movement.
Thank you.
And who was in charge of training?
Paul was conducting the training.
Were you?
I assisted Paul, yes.
Do you, again, remember giving testimony in this courtroom back in February?
Yes.
And do you recall being asked, and you were the live training guy? Do you remember being asked that question?
Page and line.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Same transcript, page 66. I am starting on line. Line number 9. Do you recall being asked if you were the live training guy?
Actually, can we have the question and answer read? I think that's the proper way to do impeachment, Judge.
If I may approach. We'll start right there at line 9. You see it where I'm looking here, Dan? What's the question on line 9?
Question, and you were the live training guy.
And what is your answer right there on 10?
Myself and Paul, yes.
Okay, so it wasn't just you were assisting, right? It was you and then Paul. Is that the answer?
We both were, yes.
Okay, so it wasn't this, I'm just kind of helping out, keeping the range safe. You were the live training guy, right?
I started out as keeping the line safe and then maintaining a like-minded role with them, yes.
What
Paul
did you
and I-
testify to?
So that
When you were questioned as to who the live training guy was, what was your answer?
yes, Paul and I was.
Wasn't your answer myself and Paul?
Myself and Paul, yes.
Okay, so you're doing the training. Let's call it what it is, Dan. You're
No,
doing
no,
the training,
okay,
correct?
No, I'm gonna object. There's no reason to raise our voices.
Right.
And his answer stands and as it was at the hearing that we had in February.
Do you want to explore further?
I think I've covered it, Your Honor. I apologize for raising my voice. First time you went to Joe's home, I believe you were showed an exhibit with an upside down flag. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that flag was on his property?
Yes, sir.
And you said that is a symbol of,
Distress.
can it also be a symbol of protest?
Yes.
So could it be someone's exercising of their First Amendment free speech rights?
Yes, sir.
And you would consider that perfectly okay, right?
For them, yes.
Okay. This training that was going on at the property, and I'm going to lump this into kind of those first 3-4 trainings that you went to, okay?
Yes, sir.
It sounded to me as you were testifying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded very redundant. Is that, would you call it that?
Yes, sir.
A lot of low crawling, correct?
Yes, sir.
I believe you testified to a lot of this, the L-shaped ambush, right? But they did it over and over, correct?
Yes, sir.
Very basic, directional at nothing kind of training. Would you agree with that?
I would say at nothing, but yes, sir, it was.
Okay, then what would you tell me they were directing it to?
Well, pertaining to ambushes, you're instilling that and you're building off of that. So it's becoming muscle memory.
Okay. Did you learn that in the Army?
Yes.
In the Department of Defense?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be offensive, does it?
An ambush is offensive.
If I'm trying to retake a position that someone else has taken from me?
That's not an ambush. So you're assaulting on that object.
Really?
Yes.
These trainings, these initial trainings that you were going through in May, April. Well, let's do this. Let's say April. Barry Croft there?
On the date, sir?
And any of the trainings you did in May, excuse me, in April, I said April. Was
sir,
he ever there in April?
On
Was Adam Fox there in April?
No, sir.
Okay. Was there a specific guide or plan as to what they were training for?
The Boogaloo movement.
Did that ever happen to you, to your knowledge?
Fortunately, it does not happen, no.
Would you agree with me that, well, let me strike that. Did you testify earlier that Joe, during one of these training, asked you into his house to kind of evaluate his house?
Obviously, yes.
Yeah, and he said, hey, how do I defend my house? Is that what he asked you?
Yes, sir.
He didn't ask you how to assault his house, did he?
No.
Okay, so he was seeking, teach me how to defend my stuff, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. On May 4th, were you and other members of the Watchmen invited to Joe's home?
Sounds about right, yes.
Do you know what the purpose of that was?
Oh, no.
You don't recall being invited to Joe's birthday?
I couldn't remember that was his birthday or not, because
Okay.
I was invited there.
You were invited there.
Yes.
How many of the other Watchmen showed up?
I don't think any.
Just you, right?
I was invited.
Okay. Right, you were invited. Others were invited, but you're the one that showed, correct? Okay. You know why nobody else bothered to show up?
I did not know.
Okay. And then let's fast forward to May 30th. Right, that's the QRF that goes to Detroit. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That was on May 30th?
It was, yes.
Joe go?
He did not know.
You know why?
I can't recall. I know he reached out to us and we were talking to him on the phone.
but he didn't go.
No, I think he was wanting to show up, but I can't remember the exact.
Was this one of the times that I believe you testified that Jada has his balls in her purse?
No, not on that specific time. Paul had echoed that settlement.
Paul echoed. So there was some dissension, right, as to how committed Joe was to this movement?
Fair to say yes.
Fair to say, okay. Then there was the very next day, May 31st, correct? There's a protest in Flint
Yes, sir.
or Genesee County. Maybe it wasn't actually in Flint, but Genesee County, right?
Yes, sir.
Joe go?
No.
Okay. Were you debriefed in between these two events?
I can't recall. I don't believe so.
Okay. Okay. So besides Paul questioning Joe's commitment, anybody else question it?
There may have been, I can't recall.
Ty Garbin ever make comments about Joe's not that active, Joe's not helping out, Joe's not doing his deal?
He may have,
He may have.
can't recall.
And didn't I believe you testified earlier, just a little while ago, that one of the events, Joe didn't go because he was taking the family to a zoo,
I believe that was the Vac Shack meeting.
the Vac Shack meeting?
Yes, sir.
And what day was that?
That was on a Saturday.
On a Saturday. Meeting in Dublin, Ohio. Do you know if Joe attended?
He did not know.
He did not, okay? And I think you just testified, he didn't attend the Vac Shack meeting, correct?
That's correct.
Did he go to the meeting in Cambria,
No, sir.
Wisconsin?
No, sir.
Did he go to any of these, for lack of a better way to put it, these ghost group meetings?
No.
Was he involved in any of that?
Initially, no.
No? Okay. And I'm going to apologize to you if I have to pull this up. Do you recall Mr. Ralston showing you, it was Exhibit 90, but it was a post, and actually, I apologize. Can you bring that up for me? I'll give it a second to warm up. 90. Wasn't Exhibit 90?
Use a transcript.
Transcript, right. Transcript. Oh, did I call it? I apologize. The transcript. Again, I'm not the most technologically savvy, so post transcript writing, we'll go with that. Dan, do you recall being asked about this?
Could you read it for me? I have a hard time reading that from here.
It says Exhibit 90T at the top. Bellar sounds like something a lot of feds would be at.
Yes, sir.
It's from June 3rd, 20, Wolverine Watchmen leadership meeting, correct?
I remember that, yes.
Okay, in the transcript, and I'll read it for you if you can't see it. Mr. Bellar, sounds like something a lot of feds may be, or going to be at. The next person that speaks is Jada Morrison, correct?
That's correct.
And Jada says, right, there are too many things. Instead of convention, you're going to have feds there flat out. And if it's at somebody's house, you don't want to go because you don't know what the fuck they got set up. And you replied, right.
Correct.
Is that accurate? Would you agree with me that this sounds more like Jada's giving direction and giving commentary than Joe?
She's participating in the conversation.
She's participating. So would you say that she has some level of control over what's going on?
Well, it's her husband, so I would feel that they're talking with each other, yes.
He's not speaking on here though, is he? She's speaking to you and Paul, correct?
To the group.
To the group.
Yes.
Okay. So again, she's got input into this, right? And didn't we hear testimony from you that they were having some domestic issues, correct?
They did, yes.
Okay. And that at some point, I believe you testified, there was some break in the communication. He wasn't being involved as much as other people thought, correct?
Correct.
Because he was busy working on his family?
He had some home issues.
Home issues. So that was really his focus. Would you agree?
Amongst this group, yes.
Okay. I believe you testified that law enforcement was not allowed into this group. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you know, or do you have any knowledge of how many law enforcement officers actually tried to get into this group?
Of actual law enforcement?
Yeah.
I do not know. People that were too pro law enforcement were not allowed in the group.
Okay. Do you know how many law enforcement officers would have then been turned away?
No.
Okay. I think a lot of the questions were directed to on direct about the trainings taking place at the Munith property, correct?
Correct.
And would you say I'm characterizing this correctly, that the training, that every time you were asked about the training, that it was said, and did he have his rifle, correct?
Yes.
And did he have his sidearm, correct?
Yes.
Are either of those things, being in possession on your own property and your knowledge, illegal in any way?
No.
Completely lawful, correct? And completely reasonable if you're going out to do some target shooting on your property, correct?
Target shooting, yes.
Okay. I believe you testified, and I'm going to move forward here, July 26th, Fowlerville, correct? It was a training in Fowlerville?
Yes, sir.
Joe there?
No, sir.
Was there testimony, or was there, excuse me, not testimony, were you aware? Was it at this Fowlerville meeting that it was referenced that Jada was dictating Joe's actions? Is that what you testified to earlier?
I can't recall if it was on that specific day.
Okay. And I believe you testified that was from Paul, correct? That was saying Jada's got Joe's balls in her purse, is
That
that?
was on a, I remember that was on a wire, on a direct conversation with Paul and myself. He
Okay,
was expressing that to me, yes.
okay. Mr. Johnson asked you if there was talk of seeking an arrest warrant. Do you recall that line of questioning?
I do.
And do you recall saying that, yeah, that's what they were talking about?
They had talked about that, yes.
Okay. And I believe you also talked about there being a domino effect, correct?
There was talk about domino effect, yes.
So how do you attribute, or excuse me, what do you attribute the domino effect to be?
To Adam storming the Capitol and taking hostages. He presented that at the June 18th protest with members there present.
Okay.
He
I'm sorry, go ahead.
made it clear that on the back shack meeting that he wanted ideas to be present there and for us to come there with ideas for that.
Okay. But if one of the ideas was, let's get a warrant and arrest her, and then the other states will follow, that would be the domino effect as well, right? If other states then went out and sought arrest warrants.
Are you referring to Paul for that?
No, I'm referring in general to the domino effect. You testified about the domino effect.
So how I took Paul saying the domino effect, he goes, here's my thing, I want a domino effect. Where's his Paul? I was me personally was taking that as Paul going back to the protest where Adam was saying, hey, we're gonna storm this place, take hostages, televise it. Him telling everybody, come to the vac shack on Saturday with ideas. So that was Paul's idea. How I was interpreting that was he wants a domino effect of what Adam was wanting to do to take the Capitol.
When you were debriefed on 531 or thereabouts, after the two QRF protest responses, who debriefed you?
I believe it was both agents.
Okay. Did you have a specific conversation recorded with Agent Chambers? You may have. Is it possible that you referenced to Agent Chambers, these guys have no plan, they're just wasting my time?
I don't recall.
You don't recall that? So if I had a recording of that and played it for you, would that help refresh your memory as to what you said? Okay. I'm going to play just the first couple seconds. I want you to tell me if you identify these voices, if you know who's talking.
What is this here? What is this recording?
This is the recording between Dan and Agent Chambers, recorded from their debrief on May 31.
No. I don't know if it could be a phone call.
Judge, I don't know what this is. There's
Isn't it
nothing in
exhibit?
I'm sorry?
No.
Has it already been admitted?
It has not been admitted. I would propose, huh? It is? They didn't admit. Yeah. This was submitted as a defense exhibit. I believe it was, is it A?
We got no exhibits from Mr. Ballard.
You got it from Mr. Johnson and it's listed.
And
Has to look at, but if it's admitted, why couldn't they?
I'm sorry, Judge.
I'll give you a minute to look, but he just indicated it was admitted by Mr. Johnson.
We talked about Mr. Johnson's exhibit list last week and the deficiencies in it. Court acknowledged that.
Right.
Which exhibit is Mr. Ballard talking about that he thinks is referenced on the other co-defendants witness list that he wants to use now? What exhibit number is there? Exhibit letter? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head, no. I
Yeah,
will look and see.
And
And this is Mr. Johnson's exhibit list, Judge.
Your Honor, it lists all three defendants on the top of
Right.
in the caption. And it lists all three case numbers.
Yeah, let's be clear. This is filed on behalf of Mr. Musico by Mr. Johnson.
yeah,
It's listed as F.
And
You didn't receive that either.
we didn't get this, Judge.
Listed.
It's
The audio.
listed, but it was never sent to us, the audio. So I have no idea, what Mr.
It was in the
Ballard.
defense Dropbox. I have it right here.
No, it wasn't.
We're gonna need a break, Judge.
yeah, I can see that. Take them out. Hopefully we can get this done real quick.
All rise for the jury.
I don't know about, because Andy submitted one too. But I don't know. 'Cause it didn't look- I'm gonna make you a copy.
Jesus, right. Okay.
Yeah, first of all, I have no idea what this is. I think I'm getting whispered in my ear. What it sounds like what this is a phone call with Dan. Now, first of all, it was the question to Dan was, when you were debriefed, do you remember talking to the agent? Okay, as indicating that the debriefs are recorded. They are not. Now, it sounds like this is an exhibit that might be a phone conversation between Dan and the agents that was picked up on the recording device. I mean, what I'm trying to do here is just let's identify what we got. Is that what it is, gentlemen?
That is.
Okay, good. So now, Mr. Ballard, I don't care how you slice it up, Judge, didn't file an exhibit list. So I mean, the only point I'm trying to make here is this delay is not mine. So now I'd like to listen to what it is that he wants to put in. Are you suggesting this is impeachment, or are you offering this as an
Well, I've got
exhibit?
a group exhibit list. I don't have an individual. It says defendants exhibit list, and
And this was filed by Mr. Johnson. I mean, on behalf of Mr. Musico. This was not joined in by the other defendants. It's unsigned. I mean, it was delivered late last Thursday evening. I mean, it is what it is. And just,
all right,
So
and it shows
we-
all three defendants.
okay, when it comes from one person, Mr. Johnson, I assume that's on behalf of Mr. Musico, but I understand. Okay, so is this being offered for impeachment, or is this being offered as an
It
exhibit?
said just and Musico, but it says defendants exhibit list.
I agree as the court. I'm past that. I'm just trying to get to what's the purpose of the audio.
And Your Honor, I specifically asked Mr. Dan, right, if he recalls this conversation. He said he did not. I asked him specifically if he recalls saying that this is what he said. These were his words. Do you recall saying that these guys have no plan? This is a waste of my time. And he said no. And I asked him if you heard that, would that help refresh your memory?
Okay, so we're looking at it as refreshing the memory.
Right.
It's not an exhibit. Let's play it for the witness now, outside the presence of the jury, because it's obviously hearsay. And let's see if it refreshes his memory.
Got it.
We've got it here.
Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Here, we can tell what's going on.
Okay. But we're in the office, so we're able to catch up on, paperwork and reports on things.
So over here, you should have done it about 3 weeks ago,
And win-win.
Exactly. Let's not delay.
Yeah, right.
Oh, did you guys have pizza delivered?
Yeah. It's like they answered the door with like their shit on. And the lady's like, I'm gonna set this down because the virus. So
Oh, yeah, that's what it was for the virus. Yeah.
yeah, so she's like, you can just point on the step and I'll get it after you shut the door. And he's like, okay.
I'm gonna run away now.
Yeah. And then like Paul's girlfriend was there. And that's like another thing that kind of irks me on just a separate level.
Yeah.
He's had 2 different girlfriends in on this stuff in less than like a month.
Yeah.
All right, whichever. And like she found out like what he does tonight. Like as we're sitting there pulling stuff up on the TV, and she's like, "What are you guys doing?"
Can we pause this for 1 minute?
We might be shooting people. And she's like, "Oh,
How long is this clip?
Clip is about 5 minutes long.
So why would we, I mean, when are we going to get to the part about did they not have a plan? You see, what they're doing is they're shoehorning in something under the guise of refreshing memory. And I'm glad the jury's not here. And, and let's get to the part where that Mr. Ballard's trying to refresh this witness's memory, Judge, and not go through the pizza
I
order.
agree with you there.
Okay.
If it's
well, that's nice."
refreshing, or
Emails that you're screwing one minute and then you're screwing over the next. It's like,
Also, I need to hear it too, Judge, because in all honesty, I haven't heard it yet. So I want to hear what the issue is here.
It's coming up here in about a minute.
Was that?
Play it from there. Should be there.
well, yeah, overall for us, real good job. Really seriously could not have gone better.
solid."
Yeah, I mean, and it'll take us probably a little while to actually process all the information we actually got tonight.
Right.
But that means we did a good job getting information.
I think the big thing from now would just be to see what's going on tomorrow, so we can plan better.
I mean, so you're aware, I mean, if shit was going down, I mean, that's the hard thing, right? We haven't planned a SWAT team for,
Still waiting.
and so,
Now, I mean, to be clear, officially, we are not suggesting that you do any of those things.
no, absolutely not.
So because we like you and you're a person, and this is actually what would really happen, you need to be able to do that,
Right.
for real.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so,
I guess I would ask you,
And
do
we
you
didn't
recall
have-
any of this conversation at this point? I asked to refresh your memory. Do you recall having this conversation?
Can we wait till we,
Just
Let's
because
get
I
to the
think
part we're talking
he's gonna be the one that goes first.
I agree. Well, he's clearly the most unpredictable.
Yeah,
And
he's vocal. Every time we get together, he's vocal about wanting to shoot somebody.
Yes, yeah, this is now multiple times where he's talking about, I'm going to shoot.
I put it out to them, just let them know, and I know you guys are listening. I'm working on Monday, so I got somewhat of a curfew.
Yep, that actually may not be a bad thing, really.
Right. But yeah, and I keep trying to push the press on them, like, where do you guys want to go with this? Because like I'm wanting to know, like, are you wasting my time in a sense?
Yep, then, I mean, so Joe's putting it out there to have either a meeting or a call tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, I'm either happy to come to his house or doing the call.
Right, and that's,
so I think the context was, the witness was talking about, he was wondering where they were going to go, and he was asking himself, are you guys wasting my time? I mean, here's what I want to do is, if we're going to play any more audio to refresh memories moving forward from this point, based on what we just heard here, I'd like to do that outside the presence of the jury, please.
It's not a bad idea. You ready to go on it?
I can, yes.
And we're not gonna play Mr. Johnson. We're not gonna play the whole audio. You
we're
just narrow it down to that.
Well, and the witness has already heard it. The jury shouldn't be exposed to that. And it's not an exhibit. I mean,
So it doesn't have to be to refresh somebody's memory.
I agree, Judge, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to keep the refreshing of the
I
memory.
put it out to them. just
Excuse me.
let-
I'm trying to keep the refreshing of the memory separate, which obviously has a lot of non-relevant hearsay in it.
I agree with you. That's why I asked if it was right to the part to refresh.
Okay, and the witness has already heard it. I mean, is it necessary to play it to the jury now? is my
Your Honor, I'm
next
objecting
question.
that it be played to the jury too, just so the record's clear.
Any problem?
So.
No, you're right. My point to, Dan, you heard this, correct?
Yes,
It refreshed your memory. Do you recall this conversation?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, then we're good.
Great. And then moving forward, if we're going to refresh memory with
Do it
audio,
outside.
thank you. Sit down.
You can have it back.
Thank you.
All rise for the jury.
Please be seated.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dan, we took a moment, played something for you to help you refresh your recollection. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you heard that audio recording? And does it now refresh your memory?
Yes, sir.
And I believe before that, I asked you if you recall making a statement that these guys are just wasting your time and there's no plan in place or anything, correct?
Correct. Waste my time in a sense, yes.
And you would agree that was your sentiment, correct?
Be as a civilian and not as a law enforcement.
I understand that, but my question is, to you, was that your sentiment?
Yes.
Okay. Excuse me one second.
Sure.
Try it. In here for a second, but I'm actually expediting some of this because this is covered and is not necessary that it's recovered. On June 28th, there was a training in Munich, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Joe was there, correct?
Yes, sir.
At the training? Who conducted that training?
It was distributed up amongst the leadership.
Okay, of which you were part of, correct?
Yes.
Admittedly.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Fox was at the training?
Yes, sir.
And I believe you testified that for OPSEC, you guys went and you met him at a gas station, is that correct? Or I don't want to mischaracterize, maybe it wasn't a gas station, but I believe that's my understanding.
Gas station, yes, sir.
Went to a gas station, picked him up and brought him back,
Yes, sir.
right? That's to keep the OPSEC of everything?
That's what they wanted to do, yes.
Okay, was the original plan to put a bag over his head?
They talked about that, yes.
Was that your plan?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. But didn't you testify that part of the issue with this whole thing was he had been posting the address? Adam Fox had been posting the address?
I believe so, yes.
So if he's posting the address of where he's going to go to train, is it really necessary to then drive over there and OPSEC him over back to the same address that he already has?
I don't know if he had that address at that time and he was his lack of OPSEC. I knew at one point he had posted the address on Facebook.
Wasn't your testimony earlier to Mr. Ralston that that is exactly what happened?
Yes.
That they went and got him because he had posted the address?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so then which is it? Is it because he was posting the address or what you just said to me a minute ago that he didn't have the address?
He posted the address at one point, yes.
Okay. Just so that we're clear. And in advance of this, did you have a conversation with Joe about Mr. Fox?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And would you agree that you were supportive of Mr. Fox coming to the training?
I believe I was supportive of Fox.
Of Fox coming to training?
I don't recall what the context was. I think
Okay.
it was talks of him, and I expressed that we were already connected to him. We identified in the same uniform as far as the Hawaiian shirts, the Boogaloo movement.
So you would agree with me then that you were in effect, and I'm going to use this word, vetting Mr. Fox, that he should come to Joe's and train, correct?
No, I didn't vet Adam Fox. He was proposed to us by Joe.
Okay. Did Joe ever express a reservation to you about him coming?
Can't recall if it was coming to training or not.
Okay. Did he ever express a reservation to you about Adam Fox?
Yes.
Okay. And did you or did you not have a phone call with Jada Morrison?
With Joe present, yes.
How do you know Joe was present?
So I talked to Joe.
But did you also speak to Jada on the phone?
They have me on speakerphone.
Okay. And did you continue to encourage Adam Fox's presence on the 28th to Jada Morrison?
To Joe, yes.
The question was to Jada. Did you encourage this to Jada?
I don't recall what the whole context was. I was going for Adam that we were already attached to Adam, that we already had the same uniform.
I believe you were asked about the Anarchist Cookbook on direct. Is that correct? Did you ever see a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook at Joe's house?
I've seen pages of it that was posted.
Pages of it that were posted. Who posted it?
He said that he had it.
Would you know if that's a constitutionally First Amendment protected document?
I don't have it, so I'm not aware of it.
Would it surprise you if I told you you can go to Amazon and buy it for $9?
Buy a lot of stuff, yes.
Okay. So again, would it surprise you to know that the FBI deems it First Amendment free speech?
Not aware of it, so no.
Question was, would it surprise you to know that?
I wouldn't be surprised by it, but
You would.
I don't have it. I don't have no desire to obtain it. I know what they were wanting to use for it. There's nothing good coming out of it, and what they were wanting to do, there was nothing good to it.
Okay. How do you know that? If you haven't read it, how do you know what good comes from it?
And it's titled Anarchist.
Would it surprise you to know that a judge in this building has a copy of it on his bookshelf?
That's for him and not for me.
Okay. So it's may not be the document you believe it to be. Is that correct?
Just for the record, it's not me.
And for the record, I left it to the building, Your Honor. I didn't identify the district or the circuit. I'm not identifying the magistrate. It just,
Yeah, keep going.
it was presented to me that, oh, I have that on my bookshelf. But I will leave it alone at that, even though it was in court with other people. So, would it surprise you?
Maybe he wanted to educate himself on what potential might be coming through. I don't know.
So a book is for education.
They are for education.
So after this June 28th meeting, or excuse me, training, it was training. I believe you testified there was a breakdown between Joe and Paul, right?
Yes, sir.
They had some issues.
Yes, sir.
Paul says, hey, we're going to create this defensive group over here, right?
He created a group, yes.
All right. Was Joe a part of any of these QRFs that were set up through that?
No, sir.
Do you know if there was communication on a regular stream between them after this break?
On a regular stream, no. He
Yeah.
said that he had kind of reached out to Joe and said that they're still boys, but there's nothing.
Still boys, no hard feelings, but the communication breaks down, does it not?
It does.
Okay. Do you attend trainings in Munich during the month of July?
I can't recall if there's any in July.
You can't recall.
I may have, I can't really. I don't think so, no.
Focus kind of leaves Munich, wouldn't you agree?
We had the big FTX build up for Wisconsin.
Right. That was the focus,
Yes.
because that's where the big hitters were going to be. Correct? Joe, go.
No, sir.
I believe you've testified in the past that your military injuries created some memory issues. Is that safe to say?
Yes, sir.
And I believe Mr. Ralston asked you if you have false memories. Do you recall him asking you that? I believe it was yesterday. Do you know what a false memory is?
You can explain it to me.
I'm sorry?
You want to explain it to me?
I'm asking you if you know.
Yeah, recalling something that I may be thinking is true that is not true. Is that your?
Okay, so if that is your understanding of what a false memory is, and Mr. Ralston asked you, do you have false memories? Would you agree with me that if it's something that you believe you remember, how can you even answer whether or not you have false memories?
So no, I'm answering truthfully and honestly.
I understand that, but I believe you said, no, you don't think you do, correct? But my question to you is, how would you know?
I guess I wouldn't know.
Right? Because if you honestly believed that something took place, even if it never did and it was a false memory, you wouldn't know, would you?
Correct.
Okay. Is that a result of your combat injury?
Yes, sir.
And tell me again, just so I'm clear, what were these injuries?
So I had a TBI, I had PTSD, sustained injuries to my back, and leg injury.
Okay. And these were from what kind of action, if I can ask? I don't know if it was classified or.
So IEDs, roadside bombs, and
And that's how you got wounded? Small arms, was it small arms fire or a rocket propelled grenade?
well, I sustained numerous forms of contact. And IEDs is what leg injury in my back. BI.
And just so we're clear, TBI is a
traumatic brain injury.
Traumatic brain injury. And these happened in
Iraq.
Iraq or Afghanistan?
Iraq.
Would you correctly say, well, excuse me, that's the wrong way to put it. Would you say that the military in general has a lot of rules and regulations?
They do.
A lot of policies?
Yes.
Some written, some not?
Yes, sir.
A lot of regulations, right?
Yes, sir.
Probably, and I don't know what it is in the Army, but I can still tell you, the Marine Corps Uniform Regulation P.35 Echo, right? Correct? I think I actually might be wrong. I think it's P1020.34 Echo. They may have moved on from Echo to some other letter, but that's the kind of thing you're used to in the Army, correct?
Sure.
A lot of regulations. Would you be familiar with Army Regulation 600-8-22?
I'm not familiar with it.
It is the United States Army Headquarters Military Awards Manual. Unreasonable?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. From this combat, can you tell me, were you decorated?
Define decorated.
Were you given awards?
I was.
What were you awarded?
Judge, where are we going with this? How is this relevant?
It's relevant because they have put his combat and his combat ability and his combat wounds and everything into evidence. They brought it up. They said, this is who and what he is. It goes to his credibility and it's a weight issue for the jury.
Fine, I'll withdraw.
Okay, go ahead.
So I have numerous ARCOMs, which is armor commendation medals. I have one for good conduct medal, Iraq campaign service star, National War on Terrorism, Iraq.
These are all logged on what we spoke about earlier, right? The DD 214.
Yeah, I could read it off of there if you want to present it to me. I can read off what my citations were.
And you were injured in combat.
I was.
Get a Purple Heart?
No.
You did not?
I did not know.
Why?
Well, with pertaining to my back, I found that out through the VA and the amount of damage that was done to it. So I had sustaining injuries from there. Was documented that that vehicle had hit 2 IEDs. I separated from the Army. Over time, my legs would continue to go numb. I thought I was developing blood clots. So I go into the VA, they do a bone scan and imagery of my spine to find that I have compression fractures. They've asked if I had a heavy fall or impact recently. And I stated what happened in combat.
Okay.
That was our correlation for that.
But the gunfire and the traumatic head injury and all that, that was all combat related and not the result of some ATV accident?
So the leg was resulted to an ATV accident, yes.
Okay. What was resulted from direct combat?
My back and TBI.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yeah.
Can I show him? I'm going to show you right here. It's on page 24 of that Army regulation.
And is this being offered as an exhibit,
Nope.
refreshment? Okay.
No,
The witness hasn't indicated any problem with his memory about anything that he's being shown, but so the purpose of it, I mean, really, I mean, and he's besmirching this man's service in the United States Army, and I'm starting to have a problem.
You know what? And I've got a problem, Your Honor, because I'm not besmirching anything. As someone from the military, when you stand up
from
here.
the military, stop it.
You want to see my VA card? You want to see my Marine Corps?
Previous service, good, I'm glad, thank you. But he's besmirching this man's integrity. He's trying to, I mean, everything was recorded, Judge. What's his point? Now he does or doesn't have a Purple Heart, so now you shouldn't believe him?
Your Honor, right here. And I'll give it to the court if I may. Read the highlighted line before I show it to him and address it. It's on page 24, I believe I said. The highlighted portion makes it absolutely clear. The award is automatic. It's not up for discussion. It's not up for grabs. The award is automatic.
Allow me to lawyer this for a minute then, Judge. What he's trying to do is he's trying to impeach the witness on a collateral issue as to whether or not he deserved the Purple Heart.
No, Your Honor, I'm besmirching him on what he is and what he is doing and his representation and their representation that he is this war hero. But it's not true, Your Honor. It's just not true. And I don't know why we're afraid of the whole truth.
Or not, but when you say misrepresenting, are you indicating he was not involved with injuries from an IED?
That is exactly what I'm saying, Your Honor. His DD 214 does not represent, and that document right here, along with this manual, clearly says that the award is automatic. Everything else in the military, all these other awards must be recommended from command, with the exception of the Purple Heart. The Purple Heart is granted automatically, and it is automatically transfixed onto the DD 214. It's right here. It's right here in the manual, Your Honor.
So it sounds like Mr. Ballard is testifying as an expert now about what the military does. How many decades after his service?
Your Honor, it's a manual. It's an Army manual dated 5 March 2019.
With more, you know what, we're gonna let the jury go and we'll argue about this outside the presence of the jury.
They're done for the night, Judge?
They're done for the night.
All rise for the jury. 9 o'clock tomorrow, Judge?
Yeah. Get copies of this.
I just got it.
No, I want to know if you have this so that, and can you make me another copy?
What page is that?
What was it, 24 you said?
24.
It's the
24 is where the
very
section of
top.
Purple Hearts
Stop with
begins.
the yelling, please, just with the yelling, it's hurting my ears.
And I'm happy to help present this entire document.
I don't.
Well, there's more section regarding the Purple Heart, but that is the entrance part of the Purple Heart from the Army's own manual.
Folks, can you see that? I'm sorry. I apologize.
Judge, I think the impeachment is what we ought to be looking at here. And who can impeach, I think is pretty obvious, but I mean, what he's trying to do here is he's trying to impeach him on a collateral issue, okay? And
Just going back to
yeah,
Mr. Ballard.
we gotta look at this in, through a lawyer's lens. And
One thing.
607, anybody can impeach a witness. Um, 608. I'll wait till the question.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm listening to you.
I mean, Michigan Rule of Evidence 608, evidence of character and conduct of a witness. Opinion and reputation is basically what's allowed. Impeachment, 609 covers impeachment by evidence of conviction of a crime. Obviously not falling into that category. Specific instance, again, I'm going back to 608 for a minute. Specific instances of conduct of a witness for purposes of attacking, and this is subsection B, or supporting the witness's credibility other than a conviction of a crime under Rule 609 may not be proved by extrinsic evidence. He's trying to bring in extrinsic evidence of specific instance of conduct. So it's barred by 608B, Judge.
You have to go ahead and take off, Mr. Johnson.
Pardon me?
You need to take off.
Probably about 10 minutes, Your Honor. So I'm just packing up. I don't mean to disrupt the court. I was just pulling up the.
And if I may respond to that, then, Your Honor, if we're going to have testimony that was elicited by the AG about combat injuries, combat wounds, and I asked him specifically about these, and I believe they were testified to under directing by Agent Empola. Dan testified, oh, I got these. I specifically said, did you get them in Iraq or Afghanistan? Right? He could have said, no, I got, this is after my back was hurt. No, that's not what we got. So the mischaracterization came from the witness stand. As Mr. Ralston loves to say, evidence comes from the witness stand. Well, this witness can't get away with misrepresenting his conduct, his service, his valor, which I would argue is stolen valor in this matter, to these 15 people.
And Your Honor, may I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I tend to agree with I do agree with Mr. Ballard, because the other issue is, Your Honor, is number one, we didn't bring out this testimony that he's a war hero, and I'm not trying to discredit. He's clearly served, so I'm not trying to discredit that. But here's the issue. The issue is when the people present to the jury that he suffers from a traumatic brain injury, he suffers from, I think they said something about a back injury, a leg injury, and that he received that in combat. I agree with Mr. Ballard. I served in the Marine Corps. I can tell you right now, 100%. Injury, combat, Purple Heart, automatic.
Got a witness right here, former Marine. He's ready to testify that Purple Hearts are not always rewarded. They're not automatic in the way that you two gentlemen seem to think they are.
It says it in the Marine Corps,
and his
Army
service
manual.
is much more current than either of yours.
Well, so
was he in the Army?
So
was your agent in the Army? No, he was in the Marine Corps.
Can you back off, please?
So he can testify
And
to
can
what
you
he
lower
knows
your
about.
voice?
Can I?
I am so
Right in
tired
my
of
ear.
it.
And I'm so tired of
hurting.
you guys just interrupting with impunity.
Judge,
Your
it's
Honor.
literally hurting my ears. I just can't listen to it anymore.
Your Honor, it says right there, and I understand Agent Arliss was in the Marine Corps, and I would agree with whatever he wants to represent from the Marine Corps. I was in the Marine Corps. Mr. Kirkpatrick was in the Marine Corps. I don't believe Mr. Ralston was in the Marine Corps. But this is an Army manual that deals with an U.S. soldiers from the Army. I don't know that Mr. Arliss can testify to anything that's in that Army manual any more than anybody else that can read it. Right? It says right there, I highlighted it for the court.
I didn't.
Tone it down.
Well, Your Honor, I'm sorry, this part
No,
really.
see, that doesn't matter. You can tone it down a little bit.
Yes, Your Honor.
I didn't, sir.
Huh?
I didn't, sir. I don't think the matter's collateral because they brought it out on direct and it comes to this case. So it's not a collateral matter. It's a matter which they opened up on direct examination. Mr. Ballard has asked the witness if he's aware of the Army regulations. The witness said he has not. So he is now refreshing his recollection as to what the Army regulations regarding the Purple Heart are. If the regulation says, it's my understanding.
Yeah, I read the regulation. What were you meant?
The current regulation as of 2019, I separated in 2010. They were not automatic at that time.
They've been automatic. Confusion that presents for the jury in this issue. I mean, when we get down to being lawyers, I mean, we look at 608, and that specific instances of conduct of a witness for the purpose of attacking or supporting a witness's credibility, other than for Rule 609, may not be proved by extrinsic evidence. I mean, that's the rule of law that we ought to be following here, Judge.
Yeah, Mr. Ballard isn't seeking to admit anything in evidence. This is just refreshing recollection.
Oh, no, it's not. No, it's being.
And it's not just, excuse me, I'm not
sorry.
finished.
I'm sorry.
And it's not just the regulation, it's the DD 214, which he has not gotten to, that has a specific area where you document combat-related injuries, in which none are documented in this case. So it's not just about this manual, it's complete testimony, including coincidentally, the ATV accident covers some of the same injuries as the combat.
That's correct.
Just the injuries, like I said, sustained in theater. So after I separated in 2010, I went to the VA. That's when they did.
Right, but does the VA have anything?
No, just the TBI.
Exactly.
You get some.
Just so we were talking very softly. He indicated to me that he believes that traumatic brain injury was documented by the VA. I don't know how long it would take to get that document.
I mean, Your Honor, you would think if he was blown up by an IED in the Middle East, he would have had medical treatment in the Middle East.
No.
So you got blown up by the
It
IED.
was an IED. We
Okay.
did a self-assessment. It was not a mobility kill. We were to continue on. I had covered throughout the time, but I continued serving onto that. This was from February to June. I went through the entire deployment. December 11th, I redeployed back. It wasn't until August of 2009 where I go to the VA seeking why legs continue to go numb. I thought I had potential blood clots. And that's when they did bone scans on my back that determined that I had fractured my lower spine. I had bone spurs. I had a wide array of things.
So you didn't receive any treatment when the actual IED went off?
No.
Later on, you developed issues and then.
They were contributing to Iraq, but I never received a.
Right.
Just continued on with our mission.
You see the side trial we're getting into here. We should not be getting into this, Judge. In the rules of.
Well, I get it, but representations have been made. What we're gonna do is tomorrow when we get the jury back here, I'm gonna let you go through in detail what occurred.
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
And as far as detail, I mean, that hit with the IEDs, you continue down with the mission when you first sought treatment with the VA.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and that you re-upped afterwards.
Yes, sir.
So that we'll get a full picture of his military background. And then we can bring, after we have that, I'll allow you to ask him if he ever had the Purple Heart.
That's the only question we're going, that's the one question he's gonna be allowed to ask then.
With
Have you-
regard
were
to
you aware of
after
the
we
Purple
get
Heart?
into the testimony about what happened in
Right.
Iraq, then Mr. Ballard can say, did you ever receive a Purple Heart for the brain injury? As I understand it.
Okay. So the cross-examination with the Army manual is going to be disallowed.
Your Honor, I would ask the court reserve the rule. I'm sorry.
Yeah, until I hear everything.
Well, here's the thing, Your Honor, I know for a fact that this has been discussed at exam. It's been discussed at other hearings. This issue has been discussed, maybe even at the federal level. I would just ask the court reserve its ruling on what Mr. Ralston is asking right now until I have a chance, or we have a chance to go back to the transcripts to see if there's anything different than what's been presented to the court or to me just a minute ago, Your Honor. That's all I would ask.
Are you gonna be able to do that in the night?
Oh, yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
I'm gonna be working late tonight like I had this whole time, so.
And we'll take any issues up after you do your research, or go ahead.
Well, and just, the court's not limiting that in my cross. I'm not done.
No, I'm not saying,
Okay.
I'm just saying with regard to this issue, because it has been represented that he was in an IED attack, 2 IEDs. I'm gonna allow him to go through what occurred with his military history. And when he's completed, then you can continue your cross. You can ask, did you receive a Purple Heart? You seem flux.
Yeah, what about the manual and everything?
Uh,
The manual that Mr. Ballard tendered that he wanted to cross-examine the witness on.
And Your Honor, it was the one page. My secretary printed the whole thing and I thought, well, I can't finish? This means I just gotta stop?
No, you don't have to stop.
Thank you, Your Honor. But I mean, so I presented them the manual in its entirety. Right? If they would prefer, we only just cut it and paste little pieces, I can do that.
No,
But this was my intent to go, here's what I got. This is what I pulled up and here it is.
How about I don't feel like my argument as to 608 has been heard. I mean, the rule addresses this exact situation, and it's about extrinsic evidence being used to impeach a witness on specific conduct that's outside of 609, which is a crime. I mean, the rule 608B prohibits this, Judge.
The problem is
It's
the
perjury.
perception
It's
that's
a crime.
I don't think the jury has received the full picture of what occurred over there
Over where, Judge? I'm sorry.
in Iraq.
Okay, so we let examination occur on that. It's already occurred somewhat.
Somewhat,
what
but
I'm-
not a complete, the fact that.
I
he had
agree.
What happened with the 2 IDs, the problems with the vehicle, the fact that he had some problems, but was re-upping at that point. And then when he gets back, he's going to the VA because of the numbness in his leg, and they discovered the lower back injuries.
Okay, but isn't allowing the inquiry into the Purple Heart exactly violative of 608B?
Your Honor, they put this into motion. They opened the door and said, this combat wounded veteran.
Well, he is
I didn't-
that.
no, he's not
there-
that.
There's no, I don't really think there's any debate about that, Judge, but I mean, there's no opening the door exception to 608B. I mean, I'm looking at the rule. And, so, I mean, there's a policy behind all these rules. There is. I mean, we know that. We learned that in law school. There's always a policy for why we don't let hearsay in, And the policy behind this rule is twofold. One, because it creates the trial within the trial that we know we always want to avoid.
Right.
And, it's like 403. And number two, it's inherently unreliable when we bring in extrinsic evidence like a document like this to, cross-examine a witness on a specific instance of conduct. I mean, I've made my argument. I hope the court, will consider that overnight.
I will, and I'll listen to responses tomorrow.